Jedi Master, standing on the sun-baked streets of Mos Espa, a place as far removed from the polished serenity of the Coruscant Temple as one could conceive. His mission, clear and concise from the Jedi Council, was to protect Queen Amidala and secure passage back to the Republic. Yet here he was, not securing starship parts, but observing a small, eager boy, an outsider in every sense, his spirit ablaze with an unshakable connection to the Force. This wasn't a planned deviation. This was Qui-Gon Jinn, operating by a different compass, the subtle guiding hand of the living Force itself. Qui-Gon Jinn was a paradox wrapped in Jedi robes. He was unquestionably loyal to the Jedi Order, a devout follower of its ancient traditions, yet he moved with an independent grace that often bewildered those around him, particularly his disciplined apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi. To the Council, Qui-Gon was a maverick, a problem solver who got results, but rarely by the book. To Qui-Gon, the book was merely a guide. The true scripture was the constant whisper of the Force. He understood, perhaps better than any Jedi of his era, that true obedience wasn't a rigid adherence to institutional doctrine, but a profound attunement to the will of the cosmic force. He would take on missions as assigned, understanding the letter of every directive. But the moment the Force nudged him, however subtly, to a different path, to explore an unforeseen connection, or to aid someone overlooked, he would not hesitate. He followed the Council's orders, yes, but he interpreted their spirit through the lens of the Force's ever-present guidance, often navigating the murky gray areas of Jedi law with an almost poetic fluidity. This unique philosophy was a constant source of friction with his by-the-book apprentice. Obi-Wan, young and earnest, thrived on clear directives. He valued structure, logic, and the established protocols of the Order. He preferred a straight line from point A to point B. Qui-Gon, however, saw the Force as a winding river, sometimes demanding a sudden detour into uncharted waters to reach its true destination. For Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon's methods felt chaotic, irresponsible even. "Master," one could almost hear Obi-Wan sighing, "are we not meant to follow the Council's instructions precisely?" Qui-Gon's calm reply would invariably revolve around the deeper wisdom of the Force, a wisdom that often eluded the Council's collective consciousness. Consider their journey from Naboo. The Council's orders were unequivocal: transport the Queen safely to Coruscant, a simple, direct mission. But an unforeseen attack forced them to Tatooine. For many, this would be a setback, a necessary evil. For Qui-Gon, it was an opening, a divine appointment. The Force had guided them here, not by chance, but by design. And it was on this desolate planet that he encountered Anakin Skywalker. The Council, based on traditional protocols and fear of attachment, would later oppose Anakin's training. Yet Qui-Gon, sensing the boy's unparalleled connection to the living Force, saw past the rules and insisted. He understood that sometimes the greatest obedience lies in questioning the very system that defines you, if that system stood between you and the Force's true intention. This wasn't defiance for defiance's sake. Qui-Gon's actions were always rooted in a profound reverence for life and the Force. He wasn't arrogant, he was simply unyielding in his conviction that the Force knew best. He saw the Jedi Order becoming too entangled in politics, too focused on maintaining order, and losing touch with the dynamic, living essence of the Force that was their true source of power. He taught Obi-Wan, by example and often through frustrating silences, that true obedience wasn't to a committee, to ancient texts, or to a Grand Master, but to the living, breathing will of the Force itself. This lesson, subtly yet persistently instilled in Obi-Wan, became a quiet seed planted deep within the young Jedi spirit. Qui-Gon's death was a tragic loss, but his spirit, freed from the constraints of the physical, continued to guide. He was the first modern Jedi to truly understand the path to immortality through the Force, an understanding that he would later pass on to Yoda and, critically, to Obi-Wan. When the Jedi Order eventually fell, destroyed by its own rigid adherence to a flawed system, it was Qui-Gon's enduring lesson that became the key to its rebirth. Obi-Wan, isolated and haunted, remembered his master's words. He chose to train Luke Skywalker, not in the grandeur of the Jedi Temple, but in the desolate quiet of Tatooine, far from the rules and politics that had corrupted the old order. He didn't wait for council directives. He listened to the Force and to the lingering whispers of his old master. It was this very principle, the supreme obedience to the Force, even when it meant breaking from established norms, that would ultimately save the galaxy. Luke Skywalker, guided by Obi-Wan's Force Ghost, and in turn by the echoes of Qui-Gon's own wisdom, chose to trust the Force over his targeting computer in his decisive attack on the Death Star. He chose compassion and redemption when facing his father. These were not choices dictated by a council or a battle plan, but by an intuitive, deeply felt connection to the living Force, a connection fostered by Obi-Wan, who had learned it from Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon Jinn, the subtle master of true obedience, reminds us that real strength often lies not in rigid adherence, but in the wisdom to know when to listen to a deeper truth. He showed that sometimes the most profound loyalty to a cause is demonstrated not by following every rule, but by discerning the true spirit of its purpose and allowing an inner guiding light to lead the way. Thank you for joining me on this reflection. What are your thoughts on Qui-Gon's unique approach to the Force and the Jedi Order? Do you see his lessons echoing in other characters or even in your own life? Share your insights in the comments below. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please consider following for more explorations into the wisdom of the Force. Until next time, may the Force be with you always.